When a group of clever-build transmigrators suddenly produces one pure stats monster, you really have to stop and ask, just how extreme can those stats get? You transmigrated, and the system presents 5 abilities to choose as your cheat. 1. Time Sovereign. 2. Infinite Space. 3. Fate Guidance. 4. Causal Threads. Then you see the 5th option, just 2 characters. Maximum Strength. You stare at the 5th option, clearly out of place among the others. You fall into deep thought. Just how maximum would maximum strength have to be to actually be called that? You decide you need to find out firsthand. Without hesitation, you select the 5th option and transmigrate into a world of cultivation. The sun burns down like it's trying to cook you alive. You drive your hoe into the earth and pull it back up. Even the dirt breaks apart in a puff of dry dust. After arriving in this cultivation world called the Azure Sky Realm, you didn't land some golden destiny or rich family backdoor. Instead, you became the lowest of the low in Qingyun sect, an outer disciple with no spiritual roots, no backing, nothing to do but farm, haul water, and take abuse every day. Not even a full meal. Then a cold mechanical chime crackles through your mind. Detected. Host's intense survival instinct. Absolute strength system binding. Binding complete. Starter gift package deploying. Please select one of the following 5 source laws as your initial talent. The next instant, the entire world froze. Wind stopped. Clouds halted. Birds hung mid-flight. Suspended. Even the dust stood still in the air. Your heart hammered. You knew this wasn't an illusion. Your transmigrator's cheat, arriving fashionably late, had finally shown up. 5 orbs of light floated before you one by one. First, Time Law. Command past and future. Reverse the flow of moments with a thought. Second, Space Law. Traverse dimensions at will. Cross star oceans in a single step. Third, Fate Law. Pluck the strings of destiny. All living things dance as your puppets. Fourth, Causality Law. Touch it and be bound forever. All other laws fall away before it. Every single one had maxed out visual effects, intimidating beyond words. Any one of them seemed capable of annihilating heaven and earth. You stared, eyes glazing over, nearly ready to close them and tap randomly. Then your stomach rumbled. That one sound yanked you back from the dream of commanding the heavens right into cold reality. You looked down at your sun-scorched arms, then looked at the half-turned field in front of you. Your thinking clarified immediately. Could time reversal plow your field for you? No. Could spatial travel haul your water? No. Fate and causality sounded powerful. But what you needed most right now was a full meal, not some cryptic cosmic philosophy. So you moved your gaze to the last option. A plain white orb, no flashy phenomena, no impressive aura, just 2 honest, simple characters, maximum strength. Your eyes lit up instantly. Big strength. One swing of the hoe would churn a massive patch of soil, haul water and carry twice as much. With a better harvest, you could trade for more snacks, and with more snacks, finally get a pork bun. Time, space, fate, causality, all of you back of the line. You reached out without hesitation and tapped it. I choose maximum strength. Selection confirmed. The great Tao returns to simplicity. Strength is the engine of all things. Congratulations, host. You have mastered the source of strength. System functions fully transferred. Beginning self-uninstall. Enjoy your meals. Before you could even react, a warm current surged through every limb. Then the mechanical voice vanished completely, as if it had never existed. The frozen world came back to life. Cicadas buzzing in your ears again. Wind blowing, clouds drifting. You stood there for a long moment, feeling entirely cheated. Other people's systems had lottery draws, item shops, skill trees, and if nothing else, at least a customer service chat. Yours gave you one selection prompt, you picked, and it immediately uninstalled itself. Not even an aftercare service. You were still stewing in silent fury when a sharp, sneering voice cut through from nearby. Well, if it isn't Qingyun Sec's resident freeloader, Lin Fan. What's the matter? Did I interrupt you sitting here waiting to die in peace? The speaker was the outer disciple's administrative steward, Li Zhisher, a petty bureaucrat who'd clawed his way up through flattery and bootlicking. His favorite hobby was bullying the powerless disciples like you. He strolled over to your field, glanced once at your half-dead spirit crops, and immediately curled his lip in contempt. Then he casually kicked over the wooden bucket you just hauled back, crashed to the ground while water splashed everywhere, and evaporated in seconds under the blazing sun. Your fist clenched tight. That was water you'd carried 2 li of mountain road to get. Li Zhisher paid your expression no attention at all. He lazily fished out a low-grade spirit snack from his sleeve, waved it in front of your face, then tucked it back away. Your harvest this month is the worst in the sector. By the rules, your stipend is docked. Idle hands stay idle. If you can't even farm, don't even dream about cultivating. Try the next life. Your chest burned like a furnace, but looking at the cultivators standing behind him, all at higher stages than you swallowed it down. Li Zhisher gave a satisfied hum and walked away with his entourage, still muttering and cursing. A mortal with no spiritual roots. What's he doing in an immortal sect? Once they were gone, you let out a slow, long breath, bent down to right the fallen bucket. Your hand brushed a chunk of dark iron or sitting in your way. You reached to toss it aside. It was a famously hard mineral, The kind that flying swords from inner disciples couldn't even scratch. But the moment you applied force, thump, a dull sound, and the fist-sized chunk of dark iron ore turned to fine powder between your fingertips. Black dust, fine as charcoal flour, sifted silently down through your fingers. You stood perfectly still for a long time, unable to process it. The wind blew. The black powder scattered across the ground. You looked at your hand. You looked at the dust on the ground. Only one thought remained in your head. Your strength might genuinely be a little too big. Over the next 3 months, you discovered just how absurd this talent really was. It wasn't a one-time burst of brute force. It was more like a number with no ceiling, climbing every single moment. You ate, you got stronger. You slept, you got stronger. You swung a hoe, you got stronger. Even breathing made you stronger. The 100-gene iron cultivation hoe you used to strain to lift, you now carried it like a strand of straw. A whole vat of water? You lifted it one-handed and walked without breaking a sweat. Face flushed? No. Breath heavy? Not in the slightest. The speed at which you broke new ground was frankly terrifying. Others needed 3 days to turn one plot, you demolished one in half a day. The one thing that never changed, you still had zero trace of spiritual energy in your body. So in everyone else's eyes, you were still the same nobody, the plain, unremarkable outer disciple. You were perfectly content with that. For you, raw strength was enough. As for cultivation, reaching the Tao, attaining immortality, all of that ranked behind having a full meal. 3 months later, you stood on the ridge of the field and looked at the golden expanse of spirit grain in front of you, smiling so wide your face could barely contain it. Every stalk was heavy with grain, gleaming with faint spiritual light, filling the air with a fragrant Tao scent. This was 3 months of your hardest work made real. By your estimate, at least 100 low-grade spirit snacks in trade value. And once you had those, forget just pork buns. You could even afford to be wasteful. Eat one, leave one. You crouched at the field's edge, running your fingers through the grain heads, already mentally drafting future meal plans. Then the sky above you cracked open like someone had split the heavens in two. You looked up, clear skies a moment ago already pitch black. Clouds churned and boiled. Purple lightning raked the air. 2 streaks of light, one black, one cyan, collided at 10,000 meters, each crash erupting into blinding light. That blotted out 100 li of sky. Even the spiritual energy in the surrounding area was scrambled into chaos. Immortals fighting. Your face changed instantly. Sure enough, the next moment, a roar from above. From within the cyan light, Qingyun Sek's supreme elder bellowed. Xian Ming, you dare invade Qingyun Sek's grounds. From within the black light, Xian Ming let out a cold, sinister laugh. Hand over the life-ascending map, or today I level this mountain and every last disciple on it. 2 peak-stage cultivators proceeded to tear into each other above the clouds. For the sect's disciples, a once-in-a-lifetime spectacle. For you, pure, unmitigated disaster. Sure enough, after one more exchange of killing spells, the out-of-control shockwave turned into a visible wall of force that swept down from the sky. Distant forest peaks were scraped flat. The outer disciple residential area collapsed into screams. And that violent, rushing tempest was heading in a straight line directly for your spirit field. My crops! Your eyes went red. Without thinking, your whole body dove onto the field, arms spread wide, pressing yourself flat to protect the nearly ripe grain. The shockwave slammed into your back like an oncoming freight train. Anyone else would have had every bone shattered instantly. But you barely swayed, planted like a nail driven into the earth, absorbing the impact while cursing every ancestor of those 2 old fools above. In a continuous, comprehensive inventory, you thought you just had to endure it. Then, seeing himself losing ground, Xianming panicked and unleashed his life-bound divine treasure, the heaven-locking compass. A massive compass shadow bloomed across the sky, expanding in an instant to cover the entire area. A strange, dominating force of cosmic law crushed down, and the Supreme Elder cried out in alarm. That's a causality law treasure. In that moment, trees stopped growing and began to wither. Cultivators had their spiritual power forcibly stripped away, their vitals plummeting. Even the life force inside living things began to drain. You felt something faintly tugged from you as well, but the toll was so negligible it barely registered. What wasn't negligible was your spirit grain. Under the heaven-locking compass's law of stripping, the golden fields you'd been protecting turned yellow before your eyes, shriveling, desiccating, and then with a soundless exhale, the whole crop crumbled to ash, field by field. A gust of wind, and the cinders slipped through your fingers. In that instant, everything inside you went quiet. You looked at the ash in your hands. You felt a string inside your mind snap. That wasn't spirit grain. That was 3 months of your life. That was the buns and steamed bread and survival for the entire season ahead. Above, Shenming was still laughing wildly. Within 100 li, human and object alike. All shall be buried alongside my compass today. You slowly rose to your feet, head down. No one could see your expression. You just silently tightened your grip on the rust-bent iron hoe the shockwave had warped. Fine. You didn't shout it, but it detonated inside you like thunder. You aimed your eyes at that black-robed figure above, performing its little god act in the sky. You settled into position, your most practiced stance, the one you'd executed thousands of times. The tilling form. Then you drove both arms and through. No spiritual energy. No spell light. Not a single flourish or spectacular phenomenon. Just force, distilled to its absolute purest. The instant the hoe swung out, the air in the forward arc was compressed and evacuated instantaneously, forming a visible white vacuum shockwave. Where it passed, space tore open like paper. Black fissures cracked apart, debris scattering like shattered glass. Xuanming's arrogant smile froze on his face. His treasured heaven-locking compass, the source of his pride, didn't even last one blink. Under that pure physical shockwave, it split apart with a crack, shattering into cascading spirit light. Xianming spat a mouthful of blood on the spot, his face a mask of pure terror. Impossible. What is this? He never finished the sentence. The space-tearing shockwave swallowed him whole. No explosion, no scream. He and half a mountain were reduced to something finer than dust, erased from this world entirely. In his final moment, he left only one last sliver of divine sense, carrying ultimate terror and incomprehension, screaming toward the horizon. What kind of supreme law is this? You stood at the field's edge, the iron hoe cracked cleanly in two in your hands. You looked at the mountain, half of it sheared off, the cut face smooth as polished glass. You scratched your head, tossed the broken hoe aside, and muttered under your breath, "What supreme law? I just hit it hard." You didn't even bother looking at what was happening above. You bent down and went back to the field, sifting mournfully through the ash. In the end, you only managed to recover half a stalk that hadn't fully turned to cinder. You sighed, cradled that half stalk of grain, and went back to your rundown thatched hut. Personally deleting Xianming and half a mountain, to you that was small potatoes, compared to figuring out what to eat tomorrow. But high above, the Qingyun sect supreme elder, who had witnessed the entire sequence, was completely shattered. He stared at the mirror-smooth cross-section of the mountain, then at your retreating back, his whole body trembling. That wasn't fear. That was the rapturous shock of witnessing something transcendent. He suddenly remembered an ancient legend passed down through Qingyun sect for 10,000 years. The sect's founding patriarch, it was said, was not actually a spell cultivator, but a body-tempering grandmaster of the ancient world, long thought extinct. Legends held that he had never ascended, but instead remained hidden within the sect, disguised as a mortal, wandering through mundane life, waiting for the right moment. The supreme elder grew more excited with every passing second, his eyes going red. One strike to shatter a causality law treasure, pure physical force to rend open space. This was the divine law-breaking power born from the body path taken to its ultimate extreme. No mistake. This was the sect's legendary hidden patriarch, awakened at last. His hands trembling, he pulled out his communication jade slip, and screamed with everything he had, "Report to the sect master immediately. Our hidden patriarch has awakened." Then he rolled his eyes up, overcome with excitement, and toppled straight off his cloud. Meanwhile, inside the thatched hut, you sat holding that half-stalk of grain, staring at nothing. Only one question occupied your mind. Is this enough rice to cook even one meal? Shortly after, Sect Master Chu Tianhua arrived with all 12 Peak Masters. When they saw the sheared mountain, everyone fell silent. The Pill Peak Master's face went white. The Sunblaze Peak Master reached out to feel the residual energy, and nearly lost his footing on the spot. The cut face had no spirit power, no law force, only a purity of obliterating force that made the scalp crawl. Even the space law fractures hadn't fully healed. This is not something a body transformation technique could produce. Not even a deity incarnation. This is a true brute force breaks all laws moment. Chu Tianhua drew a long breath, then followed the battlefield down to the one patch of land left completely undisturbed. Your spirit field. That field had sat directly at the center of the blast and the law treasure's coverage. And it was completely intact. Even more alarming, the soil had turned a deep, rich black. Spiritual energy so dense it was nearly liquid. The Earth Vein Peak Master crouched down and then let out a sharp involuntary cry. Supreme-grade spirit soil, no, 10 times better than supreme-grade spirit soil. Medicinal herbs grown here would take 100 years to ripen, and that wouldn't even be an exaggeration. All the Peak Masters immediately lost their composure. When the Patriarch attacked, he was standing right here. He wasn't protecting himself, he was protecting these crops. And in the process, his law-breaking divine force casually transmuted common soil into sacred ground. What composure, to neutralize a causality law treasure in one breath, and in that same act cultivate the earth into a supreme treasure land. The more you think about it, the more it makes sense. This is what a true hidden master of the ancient generation looks like. The longer they discussed it, the more convinced they became. So Chu Tianhua immediately issued the decree. Today's events are classified at the highest sect level. Anyone who breathes a word outside, stripped of cultivation, expelled from the sect. This ground is hereby declared an ancestral site. No one shall approach or disturb it. The entire sect is now in discreet search mode. Seek the hidden patriarch walking among us as a mortal. Observe from a distance. Do not alarm him. The whole of Qingyun sect entered maximum alert status because of you, one person. And you knew absolutely none of this. You slept soundly in your thatched hut. The next morning you woke up, looked at your empty field, and felt a pang, but quickly pulled yourself together. Fields could be replanted. People had to eat. You went to the corner of the room, pried up a loose floor tile, and retrieved a small cloth bundle wrapped in multiple layers of oilcloth. Inside sat 3 gleaming golden grains. They shone like they'd been cast from actual gold. You'd gotten these 3 years ago just after arriving, traded half a steamed bun to a starving old farmer on the verge of death. He'd said these were seeds of the ancient golden dragon tooth rice. One grain could transform a person's body completely. You'd assumed he was spinning tales, but the seeds looked extraordinary, so you'd held onto them all this time without planting them. Now, these 3 seeds were your only hope. You walked to the field's edge. The soil was black and gleaming. You grabbed a handful, and felt how exceptionally loose, fertile, and rich with spiritual energy it was. You didn't think anything of it. Assumed the immortals' battle last night had churned the earth somehow. You carefully dug 3 small holes, placed the 3 golden dragon tooth rice seeds one by one, then gently watered them with care. Looking at this field, newly full of hope again. The first smile since arriving finally touched your face. But it didn't last. A voice, sickeningly arrogant, shattered the morning quiet. Well, the useless Lin Fan himself. Didn't get blown to pieces yesterday. How disappointing. It was Wang Tung, Elder Li's own nephew, protected by his uncle's position and his own early foundation stage cultivation. A walking petty tyrant of the outer sect, always with a pack of followers. But as he approached, the first thing he looked at wasn't you. It was the soil under your feet. Those eyes lit up instantly. What excellent ground. He let out a laugh, then flicked half a broken spirit snack onto the ground in front of you. Worthless creature, this land is being requisitioned by this young master. Consider that half snack your moving fee. You didn't look at the snack. You spoke calmly. Senior Brother Wang, this land was assigned to me by the sect. And I just planted seeds. Wang Tung let out a cold laugh and stepped directly into the field. He aimed his foot at the exact spot where you just buried the seeds, and stamped down hard. Crunch. He ground it back and forth. When he lifted his foot, a smear of blinding gold was already on the sole. 1 golden dragon tooth rice seed, crushed. Your body went rigid. Wang Tung wasn't done. He looked down at you from above, his smile cruel and triumphant. A mortal dares to occupy ground like this? I'd say your seeds got what they deserved. Now grab your garbage, and get out. You slowly straightened up, dusted your hands. Your face showed no anger, no panic, calm as still water. Then you raised your eyes to the smear of gold on his shoe sole, and asked quietly, "Do you know how long I saved for that seed?" 3 years. Wang Tung felt an inexplicable flicker of unease under your gaze, then immediately covered it with fury. He drew his sword in a flash. Flame aura roared 3 feet high around him. What? A mortal wants to fight a cultivator? Come on then. His pack of followers immediately perked up. The blazing flame sword art, this guy is dead. Scorching sword chi rolled toward you. You frowned slightly, a little inconvenient, so you raised your right hand, and aimed a casual, almost lazy open palm slap at Wang Tung's smug face. Not forceful, barely even intentional, like swatting an annoying fly, but the moment your palm swung out, the air in front of it compressed instantaneously, forming a visible crescent-shaped white shockwave. Wang Tung's blazing sword chi, that impressive-looking wave of flame, hit it and made no sound at all, just extinguished. The smug grin on Wang Tung's face froze solid. Then crack, a sound like a thunderbolt splitting down from clear sky. The entire outer sect seemed to fall silent for just one breath. Wang Tung's face, in the instant it contacted your palm, absorbed an incomparable crushing pressure, followed by a kinetic energy so terrifying it defied description. A white shockwave ring burst outward from the point of impact, launching the entire mob of followers off their feet like ragdolls. Wang Tung himself never even made a sound. He simply became a thin dark streak with a long white contrail, punching straight through the cloud barrier, and rocketing directly toward Qingyun Sect's inner gates. Gone from the sky in an eye blink, his followers crashed down in a heap, and when they finally hauled themselves upright, they were completely blank. They looked at the sky. They looked at you. Their expressions were those of people who'd just seen a ghost. After a long silence, one of them trembled out a question. What just flew past? No one answered. You shook out your hand like you'd touched something dirty, turned back and carefully dug up the crushed seed. What was left of a golden dragon tooth grain, mostly ruined, barely a fragment of life left in it. You sighed, and buried it back carefully anyway. Dead horse, living doctor. To you, just now sending some senior brother Wang flying was far less important than whether half a seed could survive. 10 li away, in Qingyun Sect's Inner Hall Grand Assembly, Sect Master Chu Tianqua and the 12 Peak Masters were still deep in discussion about the hidden patriarch. The ancestral site must be declared a restricted zone. Assign a Golden Core Elder to rotating guard duty. Locate the patriarch in secret. Under no circumstances startle his red world cultivation. Just then, a thunderclap inside the hall. The entire structure shook. Dust rained from the rafters. Everyone snapped to combat readiness, spiritual power erupting outward, only to freeze when they saw what it was. Embedded in the massive pillar at the center of the hall, the one carved with 9 coiling dragons, was a human figure, arms and legs spread wide, wedged in there perfectly, as if someone had hurled him with full force. The man's meridians were shattered, his breathing barely audible. They could just barely make out the identity from the clothes alone. It was Elder Zhao Wuji's nephew, Wang Ting. Elder Zhao recognized him in an instant, and erupted in fury. As a golden core cultivator, his divine sense swept out immediately, and locked onto the spirit field 10 li away that they just declared a sacred ancestral site. The next moment, Zhao Wuji's roar shook the entire outer sect. What demon dares injure my blood kin? Today I will destroy you, body and soul. Before he'd finished speaking, he'd already transformed into a golden streak, carrying title-killing intent, aimed straight at your little broken hut. You had just finished watering the half-crushed seed, and heard the furious bellow from above. Your brow twitched slightly. You looked up at the incoming golden light, steadily closing in. You sighed. Another one. You dusted off your hands, frowning harder. Would people please let you farm in peace? Boom! The golden light tore through the clouds, blazing like a fallen sun, bringing with it the completely unmasked pressure of a golden core cultivator. It landed directly above your spirit field. Zhao Wuji, penalty elder. Hair and beard standing up, eyes burning red, aura churning with barely solid killing intent. Before he'd even fully landed, your thatched hut, barely rebuilt in the first place, cracked apart with several pops. Beams snapped. The whole structure collapsed into a heap of rotted wood. The trees in every direction snapped. Your body hollow through and through, not a shred of spiritual cultivation. Indisputably mortal. And yet this mortal had somehow sent his Foundation Stage 7 nephew flying, and plastered him into the main hall's dragon pillar. Zhao Wuji froze for a moment. Then the fury in his eyes rapidly shifted into raw greed. He'd just come to one conclusion. You must have a peerless divine treasure hidden on your person. One even his golden core divine sense couldn't detect. A slow smile crept across his face, dark and fevered. A mortal couldn't possibly hurt my Tinger. Boy, hand over whatever treasure you're hiding. Maybe I'll leave you a whole corpse. You glanced up at him, then looked back down at the 2 remaining half-seeds in the soil. Only one thought in your mind. These cultivators, do none of them have a normal brain? Seeing you say nothing, Zhao Wuji dropped the act, and flipped out a crimson suppression plate. Since you won't drink the toast, let's refine you together with your treasure. The plate left his hand, and instantly covered the surrounding area. 9 dragon parting fire formation. Activated. A crimson light dome slammed down, enclosing you and your entire field inside it. The next moment, 9 dragon cries split the air simultaneously. An infinite sea of fire erupted from nothing. 900 Zhong fire dragons coalesced from the formation, claws raking the air, flames scorching the sky, coiling and roaring in every direction. Temperature piled down in layers. The ground blackened and cracked instantly, the air itself warping from the heat. The outer disciples who'd been drawn by the commotion went white at the sight. He's lost it. Elder Zhao actually dragged out the peak defense formation. He's gonna burn Lin Fan and the whole field into slag. Over one outer disciple? Is that necessary? You had no attention left for their commentary. The moment the sea of fire rose, you spun around instead, and pressed your back against the soil, covering the 3 planting holes. The fire was too hot, it might cook the seeds alive, but the fire dragons pressed closer and closer. Heat waves battered your face. Even your hair had started to curl from the temperature. You endured it, endured more, but the blue vein at your temple started pulsing regardless. Would these people please stop? First they sent a shockwave into your crops. Then they stepped on your seeds. Now they wanted to burn the whole field too. Finally, in the moment when all 9 fire dragons plunged toward you at once, you raised your head. Your gaze went cold. Enough noise. You released your body from the planting holes, stood straight, feet apart. You raised both hands slowly, palms facing each other. A perfectly ordinary gesture, like you were about to clap once. At the same moment, in Qingyun Sect's Inner Hall Grand Assembly, Chu Tianqua and the 12 Peak Masters were still discussing the hidden patriarch. Then in that single instant, every face went dead pale, as if something had clamped down on every heart simultaneously. A force beyond any description, pure, obliterating destruction, was building at a terrifying rate, from the direction of the ancestral site in the outer sect. It wasn't spiritual energy, it wasn't a law force, it wasn't any divine ability they recognized. It was a force so pure it could reduce all things to absolute nothing. Chu Tianqua's scalp erupted. Bad. That idiot Zhao Wuji. Too late. Out in front of the burnt hut ruins, your palms closed. Clap. No spirit light flaring skyward. No thunderclap. No dramatic phenomena. Just one visible ring of white air, spreading soundlessly outward from you as its center. And in the next second, those 9 fire dragons, which had been scorching heaven and sea moments ago, went out like 9 candles snuffed by a single breath. Not even time to howl. Just puffed out. Then the white air ring hit the 9 dragon parting fire formation. Crack, crack. The light dome fractured like glass, lines of rupture spreading across it in an instant. Zhao Wuji's satisfied expression was still on his face when the horrifying obliteration force bounced back through his own formation and hit him. Impossible. Boom. The formation plate shattered in midair. Zhao Wuji coughed a mouthful of blood, his defensive spiritual gear reduced to powder, his internal energy thrown into chaos. Meridians fractured. He came down from the sky like a broken kite and cratered the earth, half of him buried in the dirt. The dust settled. He lay there, spiritual power dissipated, eyes glazed, but the expression was more disturbing than the injuries. It was the blankness and collapse of someone whose core Tao had been beaten to pieces. A mortal impossible. No spiritual power, no law force. That's not cultivating. That's not cultivating. He'd lost his mind. And in that same moment, Chu Tianque and the 12 Peak Masters arrived. They came at exactly the right moment, just in time to see you finish clapping, then look down with mild distaste, and rub your slightly reddened palms together. One glance around. Fire dragons all extinguished, formation completely destroyed, a golden core elder face down in a crater like a buried dog. Everyone went silent. That silence lasted exactly one breath. Then the cold sweat cascading down Chu Tianque's back could have filled a waterfall. Others couldn't understand. He could. What he just witnessed wasn't a hand clap. It was the body path's great Tao being used to push open space, twist all rules into compliance, and generate a pure law-breaking field from nothing. Just fanning air could blow apart a peak defense formation. Just clapping hands could reduce a golden core elder to wreckage. If this wasn't a patriarch, who was? Even more critically, Zhao Wuji, that absolute idiot, had actually managed to enrage him. Chu Tianque didn't even dare fly steadily. He dropped straight from midair in a full slide kneel, both knees cratering the ground in front of you, forehead pressed hard against the soil, voice trembling. This junior Chu Tianque, my discipline was poor and my subordinate disturbed your peaceful cultivation. A crime worthy of death. I beg the senior to calm your wrath and spare the innocent disciples of this sect. He knelt. Behind him, all 12 Peak Masters went down with him. Please, Patriarch. We beg your mercy. The distant outer disciples watching this scene were completely stripped of their minds. The sect master and Peak Masters, bowing collectively before you, not even daring to raise their heads. You were equally stunned. You looked at the people kneeling in the dirt. You looked at your own slightly reddened hand. After a very long pause, you finally managed one sentence. I just thought it was too hot, so I fanned some air. I don't have to pay for any of this, do I? That one question nearly made Chu Tianque knock sparks out of the ground with his forehead. Absolutely not. Never. Zhao Wuji had no eyes to see. He deserved everything. More than deserved it. Then, terrified you'd still hold a grudge, he immediately laid out his best offer. If the senior would be willing to continue experiencing mortal life within the sect, this junior promises not a single soul will ever disturb your cultivation again. Those words were barely out when your ears caught several specific terms. Supreme grade spirit field. 10,000-year spirit spring. Room and board fully provided. Your eyes lit up on the spot. That meant good soil. Good soil meant a good harvest. Good harvest meant eating well. You immediately switched to your most genuinely pleasant expression, and gave Chu Tianque a friendly pat on the shoulder. Why didn't you just say so from the start? You seem like a decent person. Let's go. And so, in the stunned, dreaming gazes of every sect disciple, you hoisted your broken hoe onto your shoulder, and followed the deeply bowing sect master, straight into the inner sect. From that day forward, Qingyun sect's sky thoroughly changed. The Tianyi spirit mirror floated above the cloud sea, the sect's spiritual vein source. The moment you stepped inside, everything stopped you cold. The soil underfoot was purple gold. Fine, loose, rich, a handful glowed with spiritual energy like captured light. Beside it ran a spring, crystal clear and almost startlingly pure with spirit power. For cultivators, this was sacred ground. For you, this was farming paradise. You crouched down without a word, scooped up a handful of soil, brought it to your nose and smelled it carefully, then rubbed it between your fingers. The most genuine smile you'd worn since transmigrating appeared on your face. Not bad. Very not bad. Loose texture. Excellent organic content. Then you paused, tilted your head, and continued examining. And the spirit mineral ratio is perfect too. Now this is what good soil looks like. Beside you, Chu Tianque felt his scalp crawl. Spirit mineral ratio? Heaven's pure energy. Earth's spirit desire. Humankind's sympathetic resonance. The three realms unified as one. He grew more astounded the more he thought about it. He immediately whipped out his jade slip, and gravely carved those three characters down, planning to study them with all 12 Peak Masters. You gave him a sideways look. One internal verdict. This man's illness is really acting up again. But you didn't bother engaging. You turned instead and took a taste of the spirit spring, increasingly satisfied. Water quality is good too. Plenty of trace elements. Perfect for irrigation. Seeing you in a good mood, Chu Tianque immediately produced a storage pouch, like a man presenting his life savings. Inside, the sect's top-tier spirit medicines and spirit fruits. 10,000-year blood jade ginseng, 9-leaf celestial grass, dragon blood fruit, mystic spirit lingji. Any single item would cause a frenzied bidding war on the outside. But you looked down at them for a moment, and your eyes got even brighter than before. Aren't these just excellent organic fertilizer? Chu Tianque nearly coughed blood. You picked up the 10,000-year blood jade ginseng, weighed it carefully, and delivered your assessment. This one's high in water content. Crush it, ferment it. It'd make excellent nitrogen fertilizer. The 9-leaf celestial grass also works. 5 kinds of trace minerals. You kept going, more satisfied with every item, almost ready to start composting on the spot. Chu Tianque's heart seized tighter with every word he heard. Seal off this entire area. Post our strongest elder on rotating guard. Not a fly gets in to disturb you, and you didn't spare him a single courtesy. That same evening, you dumped out all of what the sect called its greatest treasures, hacked them to pieces with your broken hoe, mixed them into the purple gold spirit soil with spring water, and built a compost heap radiating medicinal fragrance and faint treasure glow. Done. Let it sit a few days. Should be ready to use. Then you started loosening the soil. The ground was good, but years of being maintained by spirit formations had left it slightly compacted. You drove your hoe down once, and the entire Tiani Peak shuddered. Boom! The Sunblaze Peak Master, in the middle of a closed cultivation session, had his spiritual power shattered by that single reverb and spat blood. Second hoe strike, over a dozen intersect elders went pale simultaneously. Third, fourth, fifth, the whole intersect shook like a small earthquake, on and on. But everyone whose divine sense swept out found the tremors coming from the ancestral site's restricted zone, and swallowed whatever they'd been about to say, furious but silent. Meanwhile, at the same moment, inside the Holy Sun's chamber, after 3 years of sealed cultivation, stone doors exploded outward. Sword chi pierced the sky. Every flying sword in half the inner sect hummed in sympathetic resonance. A white-robed young man stepped out, breath vast as an ocean, already at Golden Core grand completion. His name was Chu Tianjiao, the sect master's son, Qingyun sect's universally recognized #1 prodigy. But he barely emerged from seclusion before hearing that his reserved Tiani spirit mirror had been occupied, and the occupier was a mortal. Chu Tianjiao laughed on the spot. Cold laughter. Interesting. Someone seems to be tired of living. He barged into the grand assembly hall without delay. Chu Tianqua was there with the 12 peak masters, gathered around the 3 characters, spirit-mineral ratio, in animated, red-faced scholarly debate. Chu Tianjiao stood at the door, voice cool as ice. Father, why did you give the Tiani spirit mirror to a mortal? Chu Tianqua's face changed abruptly. He moved to warn him. That senior. But Chu Tianjiao was already gone. He left only one sentence behind. Tomorrow's martial demonstration. I'll go see for myself. Exactly what kind of person would make my father bow and scrape like that? Chu Tianqua watched his sons retreating back, face gone a shade of greenish horror. He knew trouble had arrived. The next day, the whole sect martial demonstration proceeded as scheduled. You were escorted there by Chu Tianqua himself, with considerable ceremony, seated at the highest vantage point of the main viewing platform. Best view, best refreshments. You thought it was a bother, but there were spirit fruits and melon seeds on the table, so you sat down reasonably enough. The disciples below fought in high-energy bouts. You watched and started to get a little drowsy. You picked up a spirit fruit to crack open like a snack. Crunch, 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 eating pleasantly. Then came Chu Tianjiao's turn. In one arrow flash he sent his opponent off the stage. The crowd below erupted. Holy Sun is invincible. But he didn't spare those cheers a glance. The next moment he raised his head, his gaze cutting like an arrow across 1,000 meters of distance, to pin directly onto the main viewing platform. A mortal with no spiritual energy dares sit up there? Come down and face one strike from me. The entire field fell instantly silent. Chu Tianqua nearly vaulted out of his seat. But just at that moment, the Grand Elder stretched out a hand to stop him, with a slow, leisurely smile. Sect Master, why such alarm? Having a senior advise a junior. Wouldn't that be entirely appropriate? Chu Tianqua was shaking with anger. These fools, they were using their lives to probe. But you had no idea what any of them were thinking. You just sat there cracking seeds, frowning faintly, mostly annoyed at one thought. The seeds today were a bit salty. They'd better use less salt next time. That look of total indifference in Chu Tianjiao's eyes was a public humiliation. He snapped and immediately launched himself upward and landed on the main viewing platform. Sword out. A streak of sword chi cut past your ear and split the boulder behind you clean in two. Now I'm talking to you. Chu Tianjiao stood with sword drawn, white robes rippling, his gaze carrying the cold weight of someone already looking at a corpse. You finally stopped eating, not from fear, from irritation. This kid was genuinely too loud. Seeing you look up, Chu Tianjiao's mouth curved into a cold smile. The next moment, his golden core grand completion aura released completely, and with it, the power of the fourth sword Dao law unfurled. To fall before my phantom sword Dao, consider it an honor. The instant those words landed, his figure blurred and fractured. One shadow, 10, 100, 1,000, 10,000. In a moment, countless sword shadows filled the entire main viewing platform, every one blade sharp enough to cut through a soul, weaving and crossing, sealing every angle of retreat. The crowd below was stunned. Even the elders and peak masters changed expression. A law force. The Holy Sun had already touched the threshold of the sword Dao law. This one strike, even a Yuan-Yin stage cultivator would need to give it a wide berth. But you, looking at the mass of swaying sword shadows filling the air, just felt your eyes ache, like looking at an oversized disco ball. You first lowered your head to protect the half-tray of melon seeds in your lap, then looked back up, and finally couldn't suppress a tired sigh. There's really no reasoning with some people. Chu Tianjiao's voice rang from 10,000 sword tips at once, ice cold to the bone. Now lower your head, concede, and leave Tiani Spirit Mirror. I'll let you keep your dignity. You weren't going to bother talking. You simply reached into the tray, and pinched one melon seed shell, still slightly damp from being cracked, between your thumb and middle finger. The most idle gesture imaginable. A melon seed shell. The next instant, you flicked it, in the fraction of a space smaller than an inch in front of your fingertip. Space faintly collapsed inward as the shell left your hand. Then it vanished. Nothing left but a streak of light so fast no divine sense could even track it, tearing through the air, punching straight through the sea of sword shadows. Those sword shadows that had been showing off a moment ago didn't even make a sound of collision. They simply disintegrated along that streak of light, in cascading rows, as if something operating at a higher tier of reality had directly erased their existence. Chu Tianjiao's arrogance was still hanging on his face, but his body had already felt it. An extreme and sudden crisis. No time to dodge. No time to react. A barely audible whistle, and that streak of light punched cleanly through his hairline. The next second, the terrifying force detonated at the top of his skull. Chu Tianjiao went airborne as if struck by an invisible sledgehammer. His protective sword aura shattered instantly. His body shot backward 10 times faster than he'd ascended the platform. Thud. He sailed clean across the entire martial arena and slammed into the thousand-zhong black iron cliff face on the far side. White robes shredded, hair fanning loose, arms and legs hanging limp, like a badly hung painting nailed askew to the rock, swaying faintly with the mountain's vibration. Dead silence. Everyone had frozen. They looked at the white dot embedded in the cliff, then at you, still sitting perfectly calmly on the viewing platform. Their minds were completely blank. The first to move was the Grand Elder. Shocked and furious, he charged to the cliff face, reached out to pull Chu Tianjiao free, and then froze completely, because what had nailed Chu Tianjiao to a thousand-zhong black iron cliff face was not a divine treasure or a flying sword. It was a melon seed shell, burnt black by the impact force. The Grand Elder stared at that melon seed shell, and watched the fury drain from his face piece by piece, leaving nothing but bone-deep terror and bewilderment. His own Dao heart cracked. On the other side, Chu Tianqua nearly wept with relief. Yes, exactly right. Using a melon seed shell to shatter the Holy Sun's sword Dao, to send a golden core grand completion cultivator into a thousand-zhong cliff. This was exactly the level a patriarch should operate at. He'd bet right. Don't call me, you started. Too loud. Very annoying. You hoisted your broken hoe, turned to head back. I still need to water my field. But your steps paused, just as every single person in Qingyun sect paused. At the same moment, feeling something cold and ominous crawl into the marrow of their bones. Everyone looked up. The sky, previously clear, had been completely swallowed by blood-red clouds stretching to every horizon. The cloud layer churned like a rolling sea of blood. A killing intent thick enough to nauseate saturated the entire mountain gate. Strange, grating laughter echoed from the depths of the blood clouds. The next moment the clouds split open. 1 ship, 10 ships, 100, over 100 warships assembled from bleached white bones, wrapped in endless black miasma, emerged one after another from the blood sea, blotting out the sky, pressing down on the world. Then a voice loaded with killing intent, sharp as a demon hawk's cry, rang through the entire Qingyun sect. People of Qingyun sect, prepare to die. By my sect master's command, today is the day of your sect's annihilation. Blood Demon Sect, attacking in full force. The moment the blood clouds descended, you knew, these people weren't just here to trample your field. Over 100 warships of bleached bone kept emerging from the boiling Red Sea. A massive demon fist figurehead stared blankly down at Qingyun sect, ghost fire flickering in hollow eyes, like a pack of wolves that had found a flock of sheep and gone rabid. Then Blood Demon Sect dispensed with even half a word of preamble. Boom! From their flagship, a column of blood-red light as thick as a mountain, slammed directly into Qingyun sect's mountain gate. Sect Master Chu Tianqua's eyes nearly bled, screaming as he pushed the mountain protection formation to full capacity. A cyan light dome surged skyward, barely managing to enclose the mountain gate inside it. Even so, when that first strike hit, the entire Qingyun sect shook as if struck by a giant fist. Mountains trembled, ground rocked, countless outer disciples were knocked bloody where they stood. Worse still, the protective dome visibly buckled inward. Then, from inside the blood clouds, came that ice-cold laugh. Blood Demon Sect laid out the truth. Qingyun sect's mountain protection formation had been infiltrated 3,000 years ago. A blood sand seed had been planted in its core array eye. This battle had been prepared long in advance. No sooner were those words out than every ship fired simultaneously. Blood-red light columns rained down like a meteor shower at the end of days. The cyan dome cracked and multiplied with fracture lines. The whole sect erupted into chaos, disciples screaming, scattering in every direction, only to find the ships above had sealed off every possible route of escape. Some cried, some went into despair, some simply shattered mentally. The Grand Elder stumbled to Chu Tianqua's side, face the color of ash, voice barely holding together. Sect Master, we should surrender. If we keep fighting, the whole sect is buried. That was when Chu Tianqua, finally, completely, went red-eyed. Silence. He shoved the Grand Elder aside. Qingyun sect has sect masters who die in battle. We have never had sect masters who surrender. He looked straight toward Tiani Peak, his only lifeline. Everyone hold the formation. I'm going to ask the Patriarch to emerge. Chu Tianqua moved fast, nearly crashing through blood-red cannon fire the whole way. But when he landed at the entrance of the Tiani Spirit Mirror, he stopped cold. 3 boulders, each the size of a small mountain, were stacked in a neat row blocking the entrance. On them, carved in crooked, clumsy strokes, were 2 characters. No entry. Chu Tianqua stared at those 2 characters. He went silent for a moment. Then he gritted his teeth and drove a full-power palm into one boulder, every last shred of Yuan Yin cultivation behind it. The boulder didn't shift a millimeter. He felt his own chi surge back and nearly spat blood on the spot. Only then did he understand in horror. There was no restriction, no formation, no array. These were just 3 ordinary rocks. They were simply, each one, inconceivably heavy. Heavier than anything Yuan Yin cultivation could begin to comprehend. Chu Tianqua's mind rang like a bell. He finally understood. These weren't some sealed gate. These were the 3 rocks you'd casually moved over to block the door. While you, completely unaware of any of this, were humming a tune and filling 2 large wooden buckets at the spirit spring. Outside, explosions and rumbling, mountains shaking, earth rattling. You glanced up at the darkened sky and figured it was just heavy storm weather coming. This ridiculous sky changes out of nowhere. You filled both buckets with spring water and headed toward the field. Your greatest achievement of these past few days wasn't the sex hospitality, and it wasn't the premium soil. It was the irrigation channel you'd spent 3 full days digging, 1 hoe stroke at a time, straight, clean, uniform depth throughout. You'd looked at it and felt pride from every angle. Practically a masterwork. You'd already planned it all out. Pour the water in today, and tomorrow the half-seed could officially go into the ground. Then, overhead, a sharp whistling sound. You instinctively looked up and caught a glimpse of a massive blood-red light orb, hurtling straight down toward Tiani Peak. Boom! A deafening explosion cracked open right beside you. The shockwave hurled you head over heels. Both buckets launched from your hands. Spring water splashed everywhere. You steadied yourself and then you looked down. Everything inside you stopped. Your channel. 3 days of digging. The one you'd been so proud of. The one you'd been planning to use to save the seeds. Dead center of it. A 3-meter-wide, black smoke-belching crater. The channel was cut in 2. The water gone. The spring water you just fetched drained uselessly into the pit and disappeared within seconds. In that moment, the cannon fire outside, the screaming, all of it faded to nothing. You slowly raised your head. Your gaze passed over all of Tiani Peak, passed through the mountain protection formation, and locked precisely onto the warship up above, the one whose barrel was still smoking. I dug that channel for 3 whole days. Your voice was quiet, almost like talking to yourself. You bastards flying around up there, you've really done it now. You didn't go for the broken hoe. You didn't go for the toppled buckets. You turned and walked toward the back of the spirit field. There, since the founding of Qingyun sect, stood the mountain-suppressing divine stone. Legend held that the combined force of 100,000 Yuan Yin cultivators couldn't move it a single inch. Meanwhile, inside Blood Demon Sect's flagship, a celebration was already underway. The demon cultivator who'd misfired the cannon was still boasting about his precision. The one-eyed helmsman assumed that shot had precisely struck a spiritual vein node in Qingyun sect's back mountain, and gave the ecstatic order, all ships to refuel their spirit energy cannons, and blanket the back mountain without distinction. In their minds, Qingyun sect was already meat on the table, cut any way they liked. Then something went wrong down on the ground. The first to notice were several inner disciples. They happened to glance back, and saw that the mountain-suppressing divine stone behind Tiani Peak was slowly rising off the ground. No spell light, no spiritual energy, no divine phenomena of any kind. Just someone was lifting it. Below the stone, you arms gently extended, legs sinking into the earth, the ground cracking in great spreading lines under your feet. Then you just lifted, hoisted a stone the size of a small mountain, onto your shoulder. Everyone who saw this, minds instantly blank. Chu Tianqua froze too. Only in this moment did he truly understand why the 3 no-entry stones he couldn't budge an inch were just rocks to you, because for you they really were just slightly small rocks. Up in the sky, Blood Demon Sect saw it too. They stared for a moment, then burst into laughter. What's that little insect doing down there, throwing rocks at us? Pitiful and hilarious. Still pulling stunts when death is already here. The one-eyed helmsman's sneer had barely formed when you moved. You dropped into a stance, planted your feet, every ounce of power in your body converging to one point. You settled into a perfect throwing form, then erupted. Boom! The ground beneath your feet collapsed half a foot downward across a 10-meter radius, and the mountain-suppressing divine stone, heavier than 100,000 Jin, vanished the instant it left your hand. Then a streak of fire tore open the sky, trailing a long burning tail, rocketing upward like a meteor someone had thrown back into heaven. Too fast. Too fast for the alarm aboard the flagship to even finish sounding. Too fast for the helmsman to even begin a reaction. Too fast for the defensive formation to activate. The one-eyed helmsman's expression disintegrated. Boom. No elaborate divine technique clash. No law-on-law collision. Just pure, straight-line impact. And precisely because it was that pure, the kinetic energy was horrifying. The flagship's bow armor caved inward on itself in an instant. Then the entire keel shrieked, and bodies rained down from 10,000 meters like dumplings being tossed in a pot. slamming into the mountain gate inside and outside Qingyun's sect. No further sounds. A huge gap opened in the sky. You stood atop Tiani Peak, face unchanged, dusted your palms, like you'd just casually tossed aside a piece of rotten wood. You looked up at the remaining 99 ships. Your voice was steady, calm. One ship, to pay for my water channel. Since you're all here, none of you are leaving. What followed, Qingyun sect would never forget for the rest of their lives. You walked over, selected a larger, better balanced rock, picked it up, hefted it to test the weight, then threw it two, then a third, a fourth, a fifth. You alone fought a one-person anti-air artillery battle, the likes of which the entire cultivation world had never seen. Small ones weighed dozens of tons, big ones over 100. Any rock you looked at approvingly got torn from the back mountain bedrock and used on the spot as ammunition. Boom, 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 boom. Flaming boulders trailed long burning tails upward. A reverse meteor shower launched from the ground to the sky. No spell duel. No great Tao collision. Just pure, absolute mass and velocity. And when those two things were sufficiently extreme, spirit light shields, divine treasure defenses, anything that got hit by a bigger rock got skewered like beads on a sugar-coated hawthorn. Everything together dismantled. Several Yuan in demon cultivators had just run out of their cabins, hadn't even finished forming their technique seals, when a passing fragment caught their airflow, and the shockwave alone disintegrated their entire physical form. Nothing left. Blood Demon Sect went from arrogance to terror to complete collapse, faster than their own ships were dissolving. Run, run. This isn't war. This is obliteration. That thing isn't human. It's a demon. But running now was far too late, because you'd gotten into a rhythm. The back of Qingyun Sect's mountain got flatter with every throw. The ships in the sky got fewer with every throw. Chu Tianqua looked up at the scene, moved to genuine tears running down his old face, muttering over and over, "Great Tao returns to simplicity. The truth returns to what it is," until one particular rock, looking very familiar, got picked up casually. He suddenly jolted. "Senior, that looks like my closed-door cultivation chamber." Before he finished the sentence, it was already sailing upward, trailing a flametail, and with remarkable precision, punched clean through 3 fleeing ships in a row. Chu Tianqua's body shuddered. Then he immediately broke into even more fervent awe. Good throw. A magnificent throw. To contribute even a small part to the Patriarch's divine power. That is our honor. One incense stick of time later, Blood Demon Sect's entire sky-blotting fleet of over 100 bone warships had been reduced to 3 battered wrecks limping at the edge of the horizon. You'd run out of suitable rocks nearby, and were about to dispatch those last 3 as well, when the world suddenly dimmed. Not clouds, not darkening sky, but a thick, viscous darkness, dark as blood, smothering the entire world without warning. On its heels, a terrifying pressure far beyond Yuan Yin's tier crashed down from above. The few boulders still mid-flight eerily froze in the air, then crumbled silently to dust. Cold rain began to fall. Then an aged, hoarse voice, ancient and laced with boundless fury, detonated inside every person's soul. "Who destroyed my Blood Demon Sect's enterprise?" The next moment the world began to distort. Mountain gate, arena, wreckage of ships, sky, earth, all of it crumpling like paper in an invisible fist. When everyone's senses returned, they were no longer standing on stone flooring, but in a blood sea churning with dried bones and wreckage. Above was no longer sky, but a massive, endlessly rotating blood-red vortex. Within a radius of 100 li, all of Qingyun Sect had been forcibly dragged into a separate dimension. A deity transformation domain. Above the blood sea, a blood-robed figure, gaunt as withered wood, slowly materialized. Wild hair, hollow eyes with 2 rivers of blood churning inside them. Blood River Patriarch. Blood Demon Sect's founder, rumored dead for a millennium, in closed cultivation for 1,000 years, and apparently very much alive. The moment he appeared, every cultivator in Qingyun Sect was crushed motionless. Some had their protective spirit light corroded by the blood water, sinking helplessly. Some couldn't even draw their spiritual power, could only watch as they and their fellow disciples slowly disappeared. The Grand Elder slumped in the blood water, face ashen. "It's over. This is a deity transformation domain. We don't even get to reincarnate." The Blood River Patriarch looked down at this tableau of despair, and finally let his gaze settle on you, as if looking at a slightly sturdier ant. "So it's you, a mortal, who threw those rocks. Amusing physical form, I'll admit, but in this Blood River domain, laws are supreme. Here only my will exists, that brute strength of yours. In this place, it couldn't move a single grain of dust." He spoke slowly, savoring it, clearly enjoying the sensation of judging from on high, but you hadn't heard a word, because from start to finish, you hadn't looked at him once. Your gaze was fixed on your feet, your brand new cloth shoes, currently soaking in the reeking, viscous blood water. The shoe fabric had gone completely dark with contamination. The soles were sticky and disgusting. You didn't care about any deity transformation. You didn't care about any laws. You just wanted to get out of this horrible place immediately, and find a basin of clean water to rinse your feet. After a long pause, you finally raised your head. For the first time, your face genuinely settled into something cold. My brand new cloth shoes are dirty now. Your voice dropped with those words. You raised your right leg. Still no spiritual power, no spell light, not even a proper wind-up. But as that leg rose, the surrounding space visibly warped under some weight it couldn't bear. With a rip, the coarse trouser leg split apart, revealing a leg carved line by line as if from black iron. Then you stomped down, onto the churning blood sea below. Thud, not like stepping on ground, more like someone had driven a godhammer into the earth. A white shockwave detonated across the blood sea's flat surface, and wherever it passed, the blood sea, that boundless expanse that had been crushing Yuan-in cultivators with ease, couldn't hold on for even one instant, evaporated, vaporized, reduced to nothing. One stomp and the blood sea ran dry. Then the blood river domain began to flicker, warp, crack, like a glass mirror hit dead center by a sledgehammer, fracture lines spreading in all directions. Crack, crack, crack. The blood river patriarch's arrogance locked up completely. The next second, the space collapsed. Law backlash. His aura plummeted to absolute nadir, his body taking irreversible critical damage in an instant. Everyone's vision lurched, and when they could see again, they were standing back in Qingyun Sect's martial arena. The sky was still there. The mountain gate was still there, as if the blood sea had been nothing but a nightmare. But the blood river patriarch hovering in the air was now little more than a wisp of smoke on the verge of dissolving. He stared at you, nothing left in his eyes but infinite fear. Without spiritual power, without laws, how can your strength shatter even space? Before the words finished, the last of his divine sense was obliterated by the residual shockwaves. With one sharp sound it was gone, completely annihilated, body and soul erased. Only one faintly glowing storage ring fell from the air with a small clink, rolling across the ground. That was a deity transformation patriarch's entire life's worth. The entire surviving Qingyun sect was staring at it, every breath quickening involuntarily. You also walked over. Every heart in the sect rose to every throat, convinced you were finally going to show some interest in a treasure. Then you reached the ring, didn't even look at it, and kicked it aside like a pebble in your way, sending it skidding into some unknown corner. Then you stepped over the wreckage, bent down, and fished out the bucket from the debris pile, the one the cannon fire had bent out of shape and punched several holes through. You held it up, examined the cracks, and sighed with genuine heartache. Great, now I have to go into town to buy a new bucket too. Once the battle was over, Qingyun sect fell into a silence so complete it was eerie. That silence lasted maybe one breath. Then Chu Tianque launched himself at you like a thunderbolt, dropped into a full prostrate bow at your feet, and started babbling incoherently while clutching your leg. Senior, no, ancestral master, grand ancestral master, please accept this disciple's bow. He led, and behind him tens of thousands of disciples dropped to their knees in a vast black wave, their combined voices nearly lifting the mountain gate. We welcome the grand ancestral master. We beg your forgiveness. You were already getting a headache from the noise. You looked down at Chu Tianque still clamped onto your leg, and shook it. Let go. He didn't let go. He held tighter. Ancestral master, you are the sky of Qingyun sect. You are the guiding star of all our cultivation paths. You stopped listening. You scanned the entire crowd of people bowed before you, and quietly dropped one statement. In the future, anyone who dares come to Tanny Peak and disturb my farming gets hit with a rock. Dead silence across the entire field. 1 second later, every mind simultaneously replayed that reverse meteor shower, launched from the ground into the sky. Chu Tianque in particular reacted like he'd been electrocuted, immediately released your leg and scrambled 3 steps backward, kneeling properly. Your ancestral master's decree shall be obeyed. From that day on, Tanny Peak became the most sacred and most terrifying place in all of Qingyun sect. Not just disciples and elders, even passing birds went out of their way to fly around it. A new tradition quietly took root in the sect. Before beginning cultivation practice, bow once toward Tanny Peak. Meanwhile, you had no time for any of that. You were patching the water channel, clearing the field, and puzzling over how to keep the half-seed alive. Half a month later, as Qingyun sect was just beginning to breathe again from the ruins, the sect's grand hall suddenly received a gold character divine decree, descending from the central continent. One of the Azure Sky Realm's highest-tier opportunities, the ancient immortal sovereign's secret realm, was about to open. The moment the news broke, the sect's upper leadership surged with excitement, then immediately went deflated. Qingyun sect's vitality was shattered. How could they compete with the central continent's holy grounds and ancient families? Those people went to compete for ascension opportunities. Qingyun sect would likely not even reach the edge, until Chu Tianque slapped his forehead and his eyes blazed with light. We have the ancestral master. One sentence and everyone woke up. Right? They had you. What holy sons and daughters. What unparalleled prodigies. What great ancient power holders. Didn't they all end up like those ships? So Chu Tianque immediately bathed, burned incense, straightened his robes, and ran to the entrance of Tanny Spirit Mirror. He faced the 3 no-entry boulders, and bowed respectfully. Disciple Chu Tianqua has a matter to report. Request an audience with the Grand Ancestral Master. He called out for a long time. Silence from inside. He gritted his teeth and laid it all out. Ancestral Master, the ancient immortal sovereign's secret realm is opening. This concerns Qingyun sect's 10,000-year grand plan. We beg the Ancestral Master to emerge. Let us in subduing all the prodigies across the land. Seize the ascension opportunity. This time the door opened. You walked out yawning. One look at him. One answer. Not going. Chu Tianqua froze. Ancestral Master. But that's an immortal sovereign inheritance. Can an immortal sovereign inheritance be eaten for dinner? You dug out your ear. My spirit crops are almost ready to sprout. I can't leave. Chu Tianqua was practically combusting with desperation. White Day Ascension, living as long as heaven and earth. Supreme inheritance, peerless divine artifacts, legendary techniques. He threw out every benefit he could think of, and you had only one response for each. Not interested. As you were turning around to go back inside, Chu Tianqua's mind produced one final emergency inspiration. He screamed, "Fertilizer, Ancestral Master. The secret realm has the highest grade fertilizer imaginable." Your hand reaching to close the door stopped. Then you slowly turned around. Chu Tianqua saw an opening and rushed out with everything. This disciple looked it up in the records. At the realm's core there is a plot of 10,000-year primordial spirit soil, formed from a strand of the primordial energy of creation when heaven and earth first split open. Contains endless vitality. The most supreme divine soil in all of existence. The most supreme fertilizer. The words were barely out of his mouth before you were already holding him by the collar, 3 feet off the ground. Chu Tianqua, being strangled, still managed to nod frantically. Yes, absolutely. 10,000 gene minimum. 100,000 gene isn't impossible. You listened, immediately released him, dropped him onto the ground, turned and bolted back inside. Wait. Sounds of frantic rummaging. When you came back out, you had 3 enormous burlap sacks hoisted over your shoulder, stamped with a cheerful 3-character logo. Harvest brand. Your other hand carried the hoe you'd polished to a gleaming edge. You glanced at Chu Tianqua still sitting on the ground. Let's go. Half an hour later, at the Qingyun sect gate, the teleportation formation lit up. The group was small. 3 people total. Sect Master Chu Tianqua, expression solemn. Beside him, Chu Tianjiao, who had completely lost that air of arrogance from before, after being nailed to the cliff by a melon seed shell, and then watching you sink an armada and shatter a deity transformation domain. His gaze, when it landed on you, had shifted entirely from defiance into the fervent, almost devotional stare of a true believer. And you, standing at the front of the group, 1 sack over one shoulder, 2 sacks belted at the waist, hoe gleaming in hand, still wearing the same old grass sandals with the hole in them. The whole ensemble made you look less like someone going to contest an immortal inheritance, and more like a farmer heading to the market to pick up some compost. You were even a bit impatient. Hurry up. If we dawdle and someone else takes the fertilizer, then what? A flash of light, and the 3 of them vanished. The next moment, Central Continent. Ruins of fallen Immortals Valley. Space rippled. Spirit light dispersed. The first thing that hit you was dense, almost liquefied heavenly spiritual energy, and an aura of premium exclusivity completely at odds with your own aesthetic. Inside and outside the valley, spirit light flowed and sharp auras clashed. In the sky, a holy land's divine sun, riding a war chariot pulled by 9 serpent dragons, with holy daughters in white treading 7-color flying swords. Ancient family descendants traveled in white jade pavilions, with exotic beasts circling, every single one radiant and oppressive, looking as though they were simply born to occupy the center of everyone's attention. Their collective gaze swept over, passing Chu Tianqua and Chu Tianjiao with casual indifference, and then landed on you, that figure with the burlap sack, the hoe, the broken sandals, looking around in wide-eyed curiosity like a farmer fresh off the turnip cart, and an entire fallen Immortals Valley's worth of sneering, contemptuous, and utterly confused stares converged on you in an instant. After a brief silence, the entire fallen Immortals Valley erupted. Usually, when each holy son or holy daughter stepped onto the stage, divine light wreathed them, celestial phenomena attended them, each more spectacular than the last. But when you stepped onto the teleportation platform, with your harvest brand burlap sack, your hoe, and your broken sandals, the entire crowd's attention still fixed on you. Couldn't help it, your look was simply too authentically old farmer at the market. The laughter, the mockery, the contempt, immediately swamped all 3 Qingyun sect members. Did Qingyun sect run out of people? Brought along a dirt farmer. What are the sacks for? Maybe he's here to collect snacks. Ha! Maybe he's actually here to till the soil. Chu Tianqua's face went crimson, but he didn't dare retaliate. Chu Tianjiao, though, couldn't take it. He drew his sword light shot to the sky, aiming directly at the most enthusiastic mockers. Just as the confrontation was about to boil over, you reached out and lightly pressed his shoulder. What's there to argue about with them? You yawned and patted the sack on your shoulder, utterly sincere, as if discussing something of critical importance. Save your energy. Going in to dig more soil is what actually matters. Chu Tianjiao paused, then actually sheathed his sword, stood down quietly, those people jeering nearby. One of them immediately released his pressure, the terrifying force of a peak golden core stage, pushing far beyond his rank, like an invisible tidal wave aimed directly at you. He wanted to make you kneel in front of everyone, shatter your face. The result? Chu Tianqua and Chu Tianjiao first, faces going white simultaneously, bearing down like a mountain, needing every scrap of spiritual power just to stay upright. But you, not even a flicker of response. That pressure, enough to flatten a hillside, landed on you, and not only failed to put you on your knees, it didn't even ruffle your faded, washed-out coarse cloth shirt. You even felt it was a little breezy. You picked your nose, then bent down to retighten your sandal strap, while casually looking around, apparently evaluating which patch of ground had better soil quality. Dragon Outyen's expression broke. He frowned, then increased the pressure, even compressing the surrounding space itself into ripples. You still looked like nothing had happened, so he quickly ran the only remaining explanation through his head. You must be carrying some supreme-grade artifact that could block and conceal cultivation, because otherwise there was no way. Then, with a deafening roar boom, 1,000 zhang spatial fissure tore open without warning. 7-color celestial light poured out. Incomparably ancient spiritual energy flooded forth. The secret realm open. The moment it did, everyone lost it. Holy sons, holy daughters, ancient family heirs. All of them went wolf-like, each using whatever they had, rushing for the fissure in a competitive frenzy. You, on the other hand, were in no hurry. You first checked all 3 sacks for holes, then tested the hose balance with a few taps against the ground. Finally gave a satisfied nod, shouldered your things, and sauntered toward the fissure. Just as one foot crossed the threshold, roar, a sound terrifying enough to shatter the divine soul, exploded from deep within the fissure. The next instant, those prodigies who'd charged in first came tumbling back out like swatted flies, smashing messily across the ground. You calmly pulled your foot back, first, dusted off the sack, then looked up. From the fissure entrance, an enormous, horrifying serpent dragon head slowly emerged. 100 zhang ancient black serpent dragon, scales black as lacquer, aura boundless, already beyond Yuan-in, well into deity transformation. Every prodigy who'd been so bold a moment ago had gone completely pale, but the lure of the immortal sovereign's inheritance was too great. Dragon Outyen gritted his teeth and stepped out. This is the first gate. We fight together. He unleashed a divine shout. His supreme dragon jade technique erupted. 9 dragon-shaped phantoms condensed into purple gold pillars and slammed at the black serpent dragon, followed immediately by more raining down. Celestial light mountain sword technique, every divine ability they had. For a moment, spirit light filled the sky. Law forces wove together. The spectacle was dazzling. The effect, a single spark on the serpent dragon scales. Not even a scratch. Not a single white mark left. The divine techniques, like sand against the tide. Apparently the serpent dragon had gotten bored too. It opened its enormous jaw. Get out! Dragon Outyen barely got the warning out, before a wave of pitch-black dragon breath swept outward. No explosion. No theatrics. Just pure annihilation. 3 Holy Land heirs, people and treasures alike, reduced to ash in an instant. That settled it. Everyone fell back with maximum urgency. Not a single person dared to approach. In that frozen silence of despair, you hoisted your hoe, pushed through the crowd, and walked leisurely to the front, because you'd never been looking at the serpent dragon at all. Your gaze had already passed straight through it, and landed on the ground behind it. At the center of an ancient formation, a 10-mu plot of 5-colored spirit soil, glowing faintly, life energy so thick it was nearly overflowing. 10,000-year primordial spirit soil. Your eyes lit up. You stared at the enormous black serpent dragon blocking the path between you and your fertilizer, your brows knitting tighter and tighter, until finally you couldn't hold it in. You called out at it. You're really big, and you're blocking my digging space. Move. Complete silence. Dragon Outyen nearly choked laughing. This farmer was seriously trying to reason with a deity transformation beast. Then the next instant, the serpent dragon snapped. Its tail unleashed a sonic boom crack that tore space apart, swinging straight down at your head. That tail, never mind Golden Core Peak, could fold space itself. Chu Tianqua's heart went cold. He almost closed his eyes. But you didn't even dodge. You just, in the moment the tail was about to connect, irritably raised your right hand and caught it. Thump. That tail, capable of swatting a Yuan-in cultivator into powder, simply stopped in your grip. Every shred of velocity, every ounce of force, the moment it touched your palm, vanished like mud into the sea. Every mouth in the entire field fell open. It caught. The serpent dragon itself was dumbfounded. It thrashed wildly, trying to pull its tail back. You had it pinned like a nail under a divine mountain. Couldn't move at all. It was driving you crazy with all the twisting. You tightened your grip, planted your feet, and with one explosive rotation of your hips, get off. Boom. That 100 zhang deity transformation black serpent dragon was swung bodily off the ground by you. You grabbed its tail and spun it like a giant black pinwheel, whooshing loudly through the air. The follower beside Dragon Outyin, who'd laughed the hardest, immediately dropped to both knees. His legs wouldn't support him. But you weren't done. You spotted the ancient formation protecting the 10,000-year spirit soil. Without a second thought, you swung the serpent dragon at it like a club. Bang! First swing. Formation flaring wildly, serpent dragon screaming. Bang! Second swing. Formation covered in cracks, serpent dragon scales shattering. Bang! Third swing. Crack. Ancient formation. Destroyed. The poor serpent dragon, shockwaved into unconsciousness. You casually tossed it to the side, like throwing a dead snake, then immediately dropped the hoe, eagerly untied the harvest brand sack, pulled out the small trowel from inside, crouched down, and started shoveling soil with complete focus. Scrape, scrape, scrape. The clean, crisp sound of trowel meeting earth rang across the entire fallen immortals valley. Every surviving prodigy stared at the unconscious deity transformation serpent dragon beside you, then watched you crouching in the dirt, shoveling contentedly, face radiating pure happiness. Their minds had completely stopped functioning. Dragon Outyin had gone chalk-white, his whole body shaking. He thought he was looking at a country bumpkin. He now understood he'd been looking at something monstrous. Just as you were getting into the real rhythm of your digging, the secret realm suddenly shifted. Boom! The ground shook violently beneath your feet. The 10,000-year spirit soil, the entire fallen immortals valley, everything convulsed. Then a deep, bottomless black abyss tore open from the core of the earth. Blood-red lightning replaced the sky, and from underground erupted an ancient evil energy. 100, 1,000 times more terrifying than the serpent dragon. Then a cold, arrogant laugh crashed directly into every person's soul. Ha ha ha! 10,000 years. An entire 10,000 years. This seat has finally seen the light of day again. What immortal sovereign inheritance. That was nothing but one of my subordinates' trinkets, used to lure you all here as this era's finest blood offerings. Every heart plunged to the bottom of a pit. A trap. From beginning to end, a trap. Quickly, a colossal, horrifying phantom, 10,000 zhang tall, rose from the abyss. His features were unreadable, just two black hole eyes, that, with a single casual sweep, made even Yuan in cultivators feel their souls splitting. An ancient family's heir recognized it, and collapsed onto the ground outright. Heaven-swallowing evil immortal. This is the heaven-swallowing evil immortal, sealed here by the first-generation immortal sovereign. And the heaven-swallowing evil immortal seemed to relish the crowd's terror. He raised one hand and casually wiped away the secret realm's entrance. Everyone instinctively crushed their teleportation jade slips. Nothing happened. The exit gone. The secret realm was completely sealed. And in that moment, the previously so proud holy sons and daughters finally broke. Dragon Outyin was first to kneel, trembling all over, frantically bowing his head. Great evil immortal. I am the holy son of Heaven Shao sacred ground. My bloodline can surely be of use to you. Please spare my life. The Jade Pond holy daughter dissolved into tears, begging to be made a servant. Everyone else went the same way, cowering and fawning in various states of humiliation, utterly disgracing the name of cultivation. The heaven-swallowing evil immortal smiled with satisfaction, then abruptly inhaled. Several golden core cultivators kneeling on the outer edge didn't even have time to react. Their bodies shriveled as essence, chi, and soul were all sucked out in a blood-red stream, and swallowed. Only dried husks remained. Despair spread completely, and in this howling, hopeless hell, you alone had an entirely different set of priorities. You had no time for his monologue. Your current biggest annoyance, the wind, blowing violently around you, making it impossible to keep your eyes open. More critically, the evil wind kept trying to flip up your sack. So you first gripped the harvest brand sack with both arms, then fought the wind to tie the opening shut, and finally wedged a large dirt clod on top to weigh it down, so not one grain of fertilizer would blow away. This whole scene naturally also fell into the evil immortal's eyes. Everyone else was kneeling. Everyone else was crying. Everyone else was being sucked into dried husks. But you, a mortal with zero spiritual energy, were crouching there protecting a bag of dirt. The heaven-swallowing evil immortal was not pleased. Insignificant mortal, you dare act presumptuously before this seat. As the words fell, he formed seals with both hands, directly invoking a forbidden immortal technique beyond this realm's laws. The grand causal stripping art. The next instant, countless invisible phantom threads burst from the void in every direction, and coiled around your limbs. Someone gasped, "Causal threads. Those are causal threads. They're connected to your past, your present, your future. By rights, once tightened, you should have been erased from the entire flow of time." Chu Tianhua and Chu Tianjiao watched, their hearts gone cold. Dragon Outyin found something almost like comfort in that, and squeezed out a smile even uglier than a cry. "Causal law attack. You're finally done for." 1 second. 10 seconds. 1 minute. You were still standing there. Not erased. Not dissolved. Your clothes didn't even gain an extra wrinkle. The heaven-swallowing evil immortal had gone blank. He could clearly feel the causal threads had locked on completely. You noticed something felt off. You looked down at the sticky, binding things wrapped around your arms and legs, so uncomfortable, making it hard to move, and your brow furrowed. To you, this was nothing like a causal law. It was more like some kid had wrapped you head to toe in spiderwebs, severely interfering with your ability to work. So, under the completely blown-out stares of every person present, you reached out those enormous hands, knuckles rough, fingernails still carrying fresh soil, and grabbed at those threads, the kind that were supposed to be intangible, detectable only by the divine soul. Crack. Those law-woven threads, you actually had them clamped in your fist. The heaven-swallowing evil immortal screamed. Impossible, causal threads are law incarnate. How can mortal flesh touch the source of law? What are you? You didn't listen. You just tugged the threads experimentally. Felt solid enough. Then you looked up at him and asked with a completely unamused expression. Hey, what kind of broken knitting are you doing to me? Are you trying to weave me a sweater? That one sentence silenced the entire field. The Jade Pool Holy Daughter literally couldn't get air up in time and fainted. Dragon Outyan's brain went completely white. His drool ran down his chin unnoticed. Causal threads. Those were causal threads. And you just called them knitting. But you were clearly not interested in continuing this conversation. You clenched both fists tight around those threads. The muscles in your arms surged up, like sleeping ancient chains all waking at once. The next instant, pure and absolute force blasted down both arms. The entire secret realm began to shake. Not the causal threads shaking. The world shaking. The blood lightning in the sky extinguished instantly. The earth cracked madly. Space fractured like a mirror surface. And more terrifyingly, the heaven-swallowing evil immortal's 10,000 Zhang phantom was being dragged down along those causal threads, pulled from the heights of heaven, hauled toward the ground inch by inch. The earth beneath your feet cratered. Your arms went fully taut. Then you let out one low, flat word. Break. The next second, snap. That sound didn't travel through air. It detonated in the deepest core of every living soul present, followed by hundreds, thousands, an uncountable cascade of snapping sounds chaining together. Those causal law threads, each one a fiber of existence and destiny, were torn apart by you using the purest, most primal, most completely unreasonable force imaginable. The heaven-swallowing evil immortal took 10,000 hammers to the soul simultaneously. His vast phantom cracked through with lines. A mouthful of his origin essence sprayed out. His voice, for the first time, carried terror and a cracking note. And Dragon Outyan, completely shattered at this moment, threw himself into a full prostrate bow toward you, head hitting the ground in rapid succession. What dignity gone. Every surviving prodigy followed, kneeling toward you, frantically kowtowing. In this moment, they were no longer holy sons or holy daughters. They were just ordinary people whose hearts had been shattered by something miraculous. But the heaven-swallowing evil immortal had also completely snapped. Watching the crowd below all kneel toward you, the last shred of his reason ignited by humiliation and fear, he let out a howl. Monster! You monster! Since the seat cannot survive, then this world, these blood offerings, and you, shall all be my funeral offerings. With those words, he slammed himself into the secret realm's sky, sacrificing his own remnant soul to heaven and earth, forcibly activating the realm-destroying Moi formation. Thus, the entire secret realm entered an apocalypse. The sky shattered like glass, revealing the deep dead void behind it. The ground caved toward the planet's core. A massive black Moi disk assembled from countless fragments of spatial law took shape at the center of the realm, and with every rotation, countless spatial fissures were flung outward, like a meat grinder shredding mountains, rivers, and forests. Everything it passed through obliterated. Chu Tianhua and Chu Tianjiao were fighting for their lives against the spatial slicing coming from every direction. Faces white as paper. And you first looked at the half-sack of 10,000-year spirit soil you'd worked so hard to dig. Simple logic. Secure the bag first, then leave this crazy place. But just as you bent over, an especially massive spatial storm howled past you. You yourself unmoved. But the Harvest brand burlap sack at your feet lifted, the half-bag of 5-colored spirit soil, still glowing, arced through the air, in an almost cruelly beautiful parabola, then with a rushing sound, was completely swallowed into the dark, bottomless spatial fissure beside you. The fissure sealed shut in an instant, half a bag of soil gone, and the bag gone with it. Time seemed to stop in that moment. Spatial collapse all around, ground sinking, evil immortal cackling, prodigies wailing. But in your world there was only one thing, your fertilizer, gone. The next instant, a killing intent 1,000,000 times more terrifying than the Moi formation surged awake from somewhere inside you. The formation stopped. Space froze. The evil immortal's laughter cut off, as if a hand had closed around his throat. Every person present felt, from the deepest root of their soul, a fear they could not understand. You slowly raised your head. Those eyes, which had always been clear, had become, at some unknown moment, a bottomless red abyss. You fixed your gaze on the black Moi disk above, and the heaven-swallowing evil immortal trembling behind it. One word at a time. Hey, give back my soil. As the words fell, both fists slowly tightened. Bone and muscle grinding against each other, producing a sound like the universe tearing open at the dawn of creation. Then, you didn't care about any laws, any formations, any immortal techniques. You took every ounce of pure, absolute fury, and poured it all into this one punch. None of that nonsense, just a fist. And when this fist launched, the world directly ahead of the knuckles simply ceased to exist. With no courtesy whatsoever, light ceased, sound ceased, space ceased, time ceased. At the punch's leading edge, one pure and small black void, as if the absence of existence itself had descended, and its only purpose was to negate everything around it. So, that realm-destroying Moi disc, assembled from fragments of spatial law, in the moment this fist touched it, no explosion, no sound, not even a struggle. It simply began to be erased from its edges inward, silently, without a trace. Then the void reached the heaven-swallowing evil immortal. This ancient evil immortal, who had schemed across 10,000 years, and nearly brought down all the finest prodigies of the Azure Sky Realm, didn't even get to scream. Together with his own causal threads, his memories, and every trace of his existence, all of it was driven into the void. Not obliteration, deletion, but the punch wasn't done. After erasing the disc and the evil immortal, the fist's leading edge continued forward, and slammed into the secret realm's boundary wall. Crack, one clear, scalp-splitting crack, and the entire blood-red sky shattered like a mirror. 10 trillion black fracture lines erupted across the entire secret realm in an instant. The next moment, this entire independent microworld was shattered by you from the inside outward with a single punch. Space shards scattered like thrown glass. Everyone's feet left the ground as they plummeted, and when they opened their eyes, all survivors had landed, like falling dumplings, back in the central continent's fallen immortals valley. And above in the sky, a massive black void yawned open, as if someone had physically torn a chunk out of the heavens. Dragon Out Yin, Jade Pool Holy Daughter, Chu Tianqua, Chu Tianjiao. Every single person was sprawled on the ground, shaking all over. Just raising their eyes toward that black void made their scalps crawl. Then from amid the rubble, the sound of someone patting dust off their clothes. You clambered out, cursing under your breath, holding up the bag's torn remains, the Harvest brand label, bag mouth completely destroyed. Inside, empty. You looked down at it. You looked around. The more you thought about it, the angrier you got. What a garbage secret realm. Terrible soil quality and wind strong enough to blow everything away. Wasted half a day of effort. You dropped the broken sack remnant, hoisted the hoe that had never left your side through the entire ordeal, turned to leave, and the moment you moved, every holy son and daughter who'd just been lying on the ground scrambled backward in synchronized panic, like they'd seen an actual ghost. You stepped forward, they retreated. You stepped forward, they retreated another step. In the end, the entire fallen immortals valley silently cleared a wide, open path for you. Everyone had their backs deeply bowed, heads down, breath held. Even heavy breathing felt too dangerous, like they were seeing off an ancient walking divine artifact. Chu Tianqua and Chu Tianjiao scrambled up quickly, falling quietly into step behind you. Chu Tianjiao walked, and his eyes grew brighter and brighter. He looked at your back, hoisting the hoe. He looked up at the enormous black void in the sky. Something detonated in his mind like thunder. Sudden total clarity. Sword Dao? Laws? Divine abilities? All of it smoke and shadows. In the face of absolute strength, every flourish, every technique, is nothing but vanity. His lips trembling, shaking with emotion, voice barely making sound. From today I'm done with swords. I'm gonna lift weights. Every grain of spiritual power I have, I'm putting into tempering my body. You had no mental space for whatever he'd gotten wrong. Your head was still full of that half bag of lost soil. When you finally got back to Qing Yunsek's rear courtyard, the sky was already dimming. Losing half a bag of 10,000-year spirit soil had left you in a dismal mood. But when you shook out the torn bag remnant out of habit, you found a small cache of 5-colored spirit soil rattling in the bottom. Not much, but better than nothing. Your eyes brightened on the spot. You immediately carried this precious handful of fertilizer over, and carefully scattered it across the spirit field. Predictably, those few seedlings of spirit grain became visibly, noticeably more lush in real time. Leaves deepening, stems straightening, even the life energy thickened perceptibly. A small but genuine look of contentment finally crossed your face. At least this trip wasn't a complete waste. But just as you were feeling satisfied, finally ready to turn around, go inside, and make dinner, boom, a low, heavy roll of thunder descended from 9 levels of heaven. You looked up. Your expression went flat. The previously clear night sky had been completely swallowed by a vast 9-colored tribulation cloud of incomprehensible size. Within the clouds, lightning serpents writhed, electric arcs crackled everywhere. A heavenly authority capable of making every living creature in the Azure Sky Realm stand at rigid attention was pressing down slowly, steadily. You stared at those tribulation clouds, your brow furrowed tighter and tighter, your face filled with obvious worry and irritation. What is happening now? The sky just does whatever it wants. Another big rain coming. My fertilizer that I just spread better not get washed away. And at that same moment, beyond the Azure Sky Realm, in the endless chaotic void of space, aboard a majestic immortal hull built from the skeletal remains of countless stars, suspended above the river of time itself. A pair of enormous eyes that had been shut for untold tens of thousands of years snapped open. Those eyes held no emotion, only pure order, pure authority. Then a vast, cold voice, as if the laws of heaven and earth themselves were speaking, echoed through the entire immortal realm. In the lower realms, there is one who has used the pure force of mortal flesh to shatter the causal law web the seat personally laid. The body cultivation path was sealed shut by the seat's own hand long ago. How can such an existence appear in this realm? It cannot be permitted to remain. Your head was still full of that half-bag of lost soil. When you finally got back to Qing Yunsek's rear courtyard, the sky was already dimming. Losing half a bag of 10,000-year spirit soil had left you in a dismal mood. But when you shook out the torn bag remnant out of habit, you found a small cache of 5-colored spirit soil rattling in the bottom. Not much, but better than nothing. Your eyes brightened on the spot. You immediately carried this precious handful of fertilizer over and carefully scattered it across the spirit field. Predictably, those few seedlings of spirit grain became visibly, noticeably more lush in real time. Leaves deepening, stems straightening, even the life energy thickened perceptibly. A small but genuine look of contentment finally crossed your face. At least this trip wasn't a complete waste. But just as you were feeling satisfied, finally ready to turn around, go inside, and make dinner, boom! A low, heavy roll of thunder descended from 9 levels of heaven. You looked up. Your expression went flat. The previously clear night sky had been completely swallowed by a vast 9-colored tribulation cloud of incomprehensible size. Within the clouds, lightning serpents writhed, electric arcs crackled everywhere. A heavenly authority capable of making every living creature in the azure sky realm stand at rigid attention was pressing down slowly, steadily. You stared at those tribulation clouds, your brow furrowed tighter and tighter, your face filled with obvious worry and irritation. What is happening now? The sky just does whatever it wants. Another big rain coming. My fertilizer that I just spread better not get washed away. And at that same moment, beyond the azure sky realm, in the endless chaotic void of space, aboard a majestic immortal hull built from the skeletal remains of countless stars, suspended above the river of time itself, a pair of enormous eyes that had been shut for untold tens of thousands of years snapped open. Those eyes held no emotion, only pure order, pure authority. Then a vast, cold voice, as if the laws of heaven and earth themselves were speaking, echoed through the entire immortal realm. In the lower realms, there is one who has used the pure force of mortal flesh to shatter the causal law web the seat personally laid. The body cultivation path was sealed shut by the seat's own hand long ago. How can such an existence appear in this realm? It cannot be permitted to remain. Transmit the order. Send down the 9 heaven divine lightning annihilation formation. Erase this realm. Correct the causal thread.